Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm going to show you how you can make your very own watercolor block. A watercolor block is like a pad of watercolor paper, except it's bound on all four sides, and then you've got a little notch where you can cut off your top piece after you're done painting it, so that you always have a fresh sheet of paper on top, and it's got a little cover to keep your pad clean. And I wanted one that would fit inside my little koi sketching box that I like to use in the summer, because I find that I can hold my box like this, and I can use my palette, and I could paint right there in the lid. So before I would just cut paper to that size and just use one sheet at a time, but this is so much better because I've got the stability of a pad, and then when I'm done that top painting, I just cut it off, and I've got a fresh sheet ready to go. So this is really easy to make, and you probably have all the supplies you're going to need at home. You're going to need some watercolor paper, and I took a 9x12 sheets and I just cut them into quarters so you can get 4 sheets from each page. I used 3 sheets of 9x12 paper and got 12 4x6 sheets. Actually, this is 4 inches by 5 3/4, only because I wanted it that size so it could fit my koi sketch box. So if you're trying to fit it into a particular palette, just measure it, and that's pretty easy. Then cut everything to that size. Then I have a piece of sacrificial paper that's going to go on top of the stack so that I don't ruin any when I'm gluing, and you'll see why in a minute. You're also going to want a piece of cardboard cut to the same size as your stack, and I just use this leftover chipboard. You might want to use something a little heavier if you're doing a larger pad. In fact, you definitely want to use something heavier, like maybe a mat board or a really hard backing from like an old watercolor pad. That will just give you a little more stability. For the small size of a pad, this was going to be just fine. And you're also going to need a larger sheet of like scrapbook paper. Try to get something that's a little heavy, or you could again use like chipboard from a cereal box or something, or just something recycled. It's basically just to kind of keep your pad of paper clean. And you want it cut to the same width as your paper, and then longer because you're going to wrap it around, and you can trim it to size afterwards. So this was 8.5 by 11 scrapbook paper, and I just cut it so that I'd have the word love there. Alright, so then you're going to sandwich your watercolor paper between your cardboard and your sacrificial sheet here up top, and just try to make sure they're lined up as good as you can get them. Now I cut these by hand with my paper trimmer, and it's not like the most accurate paper trimmer in the world, but it's pretty good. It doesn't have to be exact. Then I'm just using clothespins to clip these together, and I basically want to do 2 on each side. Now I'm going to want a notch for cutting, because otherwise you're going to have all your papers glued together, and that is probably not what you want. You're going to want to be able to take them apart after you've done a painting. So I'm clipping 2 on each side on 3 sides, then I'm just going to put 1 in the middle here. This is the side that I'm going to have my gluing notch on, or my unglued section, my unglued notch. If you've ever used a watercolor block, you know what I'm talking about. So then what else I have is a hot glue gun and glue sticks and a little silicone spatula. And I'm actually going to make sure I have a couple extra glue sticks before we begin, just in case I run low. There's nothing fancy about the glue sticks I'm using either, just, cheap hardware store, office supply store, or craft store glue sticks. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put some glue right here on the edge, and I don't have to be too careful because I have the sacrificial paper on top, so I don't have to worry about ruining my watercolor paper. And you just got to smooth it out and kind of push it into your paper. And you can neaten it up on the bottom of your pad, but you're not even going to see the bottom, so don't worry about what gets on the top and the bottom. What you're going for is just if you could see, that's kind of just a smooth, glossy area. So then I'm going to go on this side of this clip, right, because I want to leave that gap. Remember, I need to have that notch so I can cut things apart, and I'm going to do another little bead, and you'll get the hang of this. Now, traditionally use like a wet padding compound to do this, but I didn't have any, and I didn't want to spend the money because it's kind of expensive, so I decided I would see if what I had worked. Now I could see right there that I missed a spot, so I'm going to put some more glue right there and spread it out. These little spatulas are really handy. If you don't have these, you could probably fashion something out of just the dollar store even has little inexpensive silicone spatulas. I don't think it would hurt. You borrow it from your kitchen, then just peel it off and wash it before you use it with food. I really don't think it's going to hurt anything. So then you can see here, probably if I can catch the light just right, you should be able to see that there's no glue right there, and that's what we're going to be able to use to cut off our sheet after we paint on it. And I'll demonstrate that in a second after this is dry. So now we got to move our clips around a little bit. Actually, I don't really need to clip that side because we've already glued it. I just need to move that. And I am going to move this one over to the edge. And since we're working dry, we don't need to have a book press or do any like heavy duty clamping. This is going to be plenty of pressure, which is really nice, especially for a small pad like this. So again, I'm going to smooth it out. I find that if I could do this in one stroke, I get a much nicer finish. Just make sure you've caught every sheet of paper when you do it, and you'll be all set. I find just a continuous bead, it's hard to kind of do it without any waste. You're going to have a little bit of waste of glue, but glue sticks are pretty cheap, especially compared to like the bookbinding padding compound. You know, you just kind of want to get an even coating and then just spread it out. And then if you see that it's kind of coming apart, then go ahead and just kind of pinch it with your fingers. It only takes a second to set up, so you can definitely do that. I'm going to pause it while the furnace stops its course, and we'll finish up that back side. Okay, now all we have to do is this last side, and this one is going all the way across. Remember, we only had to leave that notch for one side, and we'll try to give it a pretty even bead all the way across. And don't worry if it gets a little messy, because we have the I like to kind of push it back there, make sure I get that corner good. We have that sacrificial sheet on the top. Oops, I got a big clump in there. I am going to pick that out before it dries and put a little bit more. You got to make sure you get the corners good. They tend to be the area where the papers want to separate. And then if you feel like it's coming apart at all, you can kind of just push it with your hands. This is a small piece, so you know, if you're doing something really big, you might want to have a couple rulers that you could kind of squeeze it, or just a couple pieces of wood where you could just kind of squeeze it while that's drying. But with a small pad like this, I really wouldn't worry about it too much. Now while that's just completely setting up, I'm just going to set it aside, and I want to show you just what I did while the furnace was running and I was pausing the video. I took some scraps, just some old scrapbook paper that I had in my stash, and I end up with these weird thin strips when I make envelopes. So I have all these like little leftover strips, and I just did the same thing, except all I did was I bound it on one end and then just kind of wrapped some other scraps around it just to kind of make it a little more decorative. But you could stick that in your purse, and then you know, write your little note, and then you can just peel, you know, that sheet off and have a fresh sheet underneath. This is great for if you have a lot of kids at home, or if you have any kids at home like to draw or like to play store, or you know, play waitress or whatever. You could make up a bunch of these little pads with your scraps, and then they would go to good use. You know, unless, you know, of course, if you use your scraps, you could just use your scraps for scrapbooking, but if you happen to have an awful lot of leftovers like I do, that's a great idea for them. Okay, so now this is pretty well cool. You'll know it's dry when it's cool. You can remove the sacrificial paper here, and to do that, I like to use either like a butter knife or a palette knife, something that's thin and not like really sharp. You want something that's kind of dull. And I'm going to get my knife underneath that sacrificial piece. That's that scrapbook paper scrap that we have. It could be anything. It could be like it could be anything. It could be an old homework paper. It doesn't matter. And then we're going to slice that right off. So this is how you end up, after you do a painting, this is how you remove it from your block, and you have a fresh sheet underneath. So we're going to slice that right off. And it's held pretty tight actually, so that's a good sign. All the way around here. And that's why we need that notch, because that's where we put our knife in there. And then we're left with a nice fresh sheet of watercolor paper. If you do have any gummy bits like that, you can go in with a craft knife like this and just kind of whittle them off. Just watch out for your fingers. It doesn't take much pressure to remove the hot glue. Just file away any bits like that if they bother you. If they don't bother you, then leave them be. They're not going to hurt anything. And now we're going to make our wraparound cover, and I thought this was really pretty. I want this to be on the top. I like to have my notch that we cut on the inside, so so it kind of stays protected, because that's the weakest part of our whole block. So what I'm going to do is just line that up like that, and then I'm just going to wrap this paper around that I've already cut to fit. Yeah, that's how I want to do it, kind of like that. Because if I didn't care about that love showing, then I would have had the extra over here, so I could have, just so I could fold it back and have a little more of a sturdy cover like I did. I'll show you the other one again, how I did that. Well, let's move this out of the way here. And since our pad is protected, we can work right on this table and not worry about how clean it is. I'm just going to crease this so I have a nice cover. And then I'm going to make another crease where I have that second kind of finger fold there. And then we can put this right back in here. I want that in here at the crease. And then I'm just going to make a mark so I could go and trim off the extra paper. And I'll be right back after I trim that on my paper cutter. And then all I need to do is just kind of glue, and I don't, you know, you don't have to have it wrap all the way around like that. I just thought it looks a little neater. I'm just going to put a little glue on the back there. You don't need too much. I just think it kind of pretties it up. And I wouldn't put too much on there because it will dry before you get a chance to fold it around. Then just fold it around as neat as you can. And there you have a watercolor block. So you'd go out into the field, like if you're using your little sketch box here, you could pop it right up there and do your painting. And then when your painting's all done and you want a fresh sheet of paper, all you do is you put your palette knife right in here, right in the little notch that you left, and you slice off that top sheet and you get a fresh sheet underneath. And what I like to do is usually keep like a Ziploc baggie or an envelope in my painting bag, and I'll put my finished paintings inside the envelope so I don't have to worry about them getting damaged. So okay, I wanted to do a follow-up because I did take my watercolor block and my paints out to the beach the other day, and I decided to try it out, make sure it worked, and nothing lifted. My painting stayed down while I painted it. And now I'm just going to show you how to remove that painting. I know I showed you with the sacrificial paper, but I just want to show you after you're done painting, all you do is you take a little palette knife or a butter knife or something that's thin but dull, and just go right around the edges. And you cut off that top sheet. Okay, so there's our painting, and there's our fresh sheet ready to go for the next time. And close up your little block. And what I actually did when I was sitting, so I was sitting on my beach chair on the shore, what I did was I just folded this back and set it right there and held it. And I love this little set because the paints are decent, but it's not so expensive that I worry about messing it up. So I would just, you know, hold it like that and right on my lap and be able to mix my colors and paint, and it worked out really well. I'm glad I made this to fit the little lid there because it makes it so much more useful. So I just wanted to show you how I made it with that and just prove to you that it does work. And just, you know, as a reminder, if you're going to do this for a larger sheet of paper, you're going to want a thicker cardboard base, and you know, just make sure you have your pages glued down. And at a larger sheet, it may still ripple a bit, but it does ripple with blocks too, even Arches ones I've noticed, if you're getting a big sheet, and sometimes you do separate towards the end. But I think this is a great solution, especially for your smaller blocks, and certainly it's a money-saving one. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love it oh my gosh, I'd love it if you'd give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this tutorial, and share it with your other crafty and artsy friends who watercolor, because hopefully they'll find that useful and save them a bunch of cash. So thanks so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.